Suhag Jewelers, timeless jewelry for generations.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of From a Mother to Another. And I am Sandy Banerjee, and this is where you get to hear from moms around the world. So, our today's topic is homeschooling. So, please join me in welcoming Sandhya to this show. Hello, Sandhya. How are you?
Hi. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I am sure that you have enough on your plate, but thank you so much for spending some time with us.
I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. So before we jump into the set of questions, let's give a round of introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Sandhya. I have 2 kids. I have been homeschooling now since we've had the shutdown for the last few months. But before that, I homeschooled for almost 6 years. My kids are in 9th grade. My son is in 9th grade and my daughter is in 7th grade. They are 14 and 12.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah. Especially, homeschooling is kind of a new concept to some people, right? And people are still getting used to it. And some people want to do it, but they're not sure where to start, right? So what kind of preparations do you think before you started homeschooling you have to take, or, any kind of pointers that you have for parents who are considering homeschooling as an option?
So every state, I'm in California. Every state has their own standards. Things like my kids are required to take state testing. Not this year, of course, but in the past, they were always required to do that. We were always required to turn in their hours and examples of their work. I have always worked through charters. There's a few different ways you can homeschool in my state. You can do a private school. So I could do Sandhya's day school and call it whatever I want. And my students are my only private school students. When you do it that way, though, you don't get any state funding. And so I did it through my first time. My first charter was called Folsom Charter Community Homeschool. And we did that for about 4 years. And we got $200 per trimester per child. And that would help us. We could use that for consumables or lessons. So you cannot buy textbooks or novels, things like that, but you can buy workbooks, coloring books, anything that can get used up, art supplies, etc. Or we could put it towards any kind of lessons that they would take. So we did that for 4 years. We started with my daughter. We actually grade accelerated her to 1st grade. And my son started homeschooling with me when he started 3rd grade. So 1st and 3rd, hands down the hardest years that we had to do because they were little. The little one had kind of learned how to read, but her handwriting was not there yet. I taught them both how to do cursive, things like that. And that was a really challenging time. But before we started homeschooling, I did have to do a lot of research on what my state laws were. Sure. And what resources were out there for me. We got really lucky because the first charter we used also offered workshops, which are classes. So they would go usually 1 hour a day, 1 to 2 hours a day, and they would do things like art, science. There was an American Girl book club that my daughter fell in love with, and they would do a little craft and read and so things like that. So, and that's actually how we built our homeschool community because we go to the same classes with the same friends week after week. Eventually that turned into birthday parties and outings and field trips, etc. So we got really, really, really lucky finding them because they were a great support to me those first 4 years. So they definitely do a lot of research on what you can and can't do. And see and kind of really look at what resources are available for you because there's a lot out there.
Okay. So in terms of the amount of time that you spent before, starting homeschooling your kids, how long would you say that was?
I read a couple of really good books. The Well-Trained Child is one.
Okay.
And I talk to some friends that I knew were homeschooling, and definitely put in several hours.
I can imagine.
And a lot of time really mentally preparing yourself for this journey. And I think that's the main difference between what they're calling distance learning right now and homeschooling. Homeschooling is a very well thought out, or should be well thought out, and something that you think about. You pray if you're the praying type, and you go into it with eyes wide open. This distance learning is a completely different thing. It's very difficult. Maybe my kids have a little bit of an advantage having had experience homeschooling.
Yeah.
But we did a lot of field trips. We would go places, meet up with friends, science clubs, etc. And this is very different because they are either at home or they're allowed to walk the dogs, and that's about it.
Right.
So I would not take this and be like, oh, this is what homeschooling is, and I don't like it.
Right.
It's very, very, very different.
Right. And that is a very important topic. I mean, if there are parents who have done it for a couple months and they say, okay, you know what, we got homeschooling down. Yeah. And I think it's a very important thing that you pointed out, that there's a huge difference between the two ways of working. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about a typical day. Might not be a typical, but just any day, when you're homeschooling. Can you describe how your days went?
Sure. So I'm going to go a little bit back because my kids are now in 7th and 9th, and it looks completely different. But when they were in 1st and 3rd, we did have a bedroom that we weren't using, so we turned that into a schoolroom.
Okay.
So we got a little IKEA dining table that extended, so when we had bigger projects, we could actually extend the table and they could work there. But we would all sit down. We initially tried to have a start time and break times, and then that all fell apart very, very quickly. Just like with distance learning, people have their charts and then they go, okay, this is not, so we ended up working on the couch, working in the car, wherever we were comfortable. But initially it started like that. And I would work with one and then give the other one a smaller assignment. And then check in with the other one, back and forth. And then when they got a little bit older, probably when they were in 3rd and 5th, we started really combining all their things. So my husband did a lot of the science with them. It's a program called Real Science. Okay. So he would conduct the experiments. They did physics, chemistry, biology. They did a lot of really, really fun projects together. And we found it was much easier to do it together for both of them. And then we did a moving westward program with them because in California, they do California history in 4th grade. So I figure we just split the difference, and they were in 3rd and 5th. And so we did this whole moving westward, Oregon Trail, all of those things. And we combined our social studies and our language arts, etc. And because we did them both together, it made things a lot simpler for us.
Okay. Yeah. So, that makes sense because it's challenging to homeschool 2 kids at a time, right? And so that's how you worked it out.
Yeah. And they were at very different levels to begin with. And they kind of, they really met in the middle after a while. It was nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we work a few hours a day. It's not, the typical 6.5 or 7 hour school day. By no means. It would be maybe 2 hours solid work, and then educational videos, reading, PE, all those things counted as towards our school day. So it wasn't like I sat with them for 6 or 7 hours a day ever.
Okay. Awesome. So one of the things that parents are concerned when they think about homeschooling, right? The socialization part, right? And I think you touched upon a couple points where you said that you would go out with the same, because there were 1 or 2 hours per day where you would go and see, people in your classes. What other things did you guys do in order to take care of that? Because that's an important thing, right?
Right.
And, and sometimes that becomes a blocker for parents to not homeschool some of the kids.
Right.
So what did you guys do?
That's probably the question I get asked the most when people are thinking about homeschooling is, and we call it the S word, it's socialization. And how do we get that? We don't want our kids to be weird. We don't want them to be antisocial or
Right.
uncomfortable. And I found, honestly, we were the opposite, because between the workshops and the field trips, they were interacting with kids around their age. And that's
Mhm.
also the other thing is, school is very kind of artificial as far as socialization.
Mhm.
It's, when you go into a workplace, you're not like, oh, I'm here to meet with the other
Right.
23-year-olds, and that's it. Like, I'm not going to and so homeschool kids often get a chance to interact with kids who are a little bit older, and the younger siblings who are still toddlers,
Right.
which I feel like is more reflective of what adulthood is like.
Sure.
I'm 40 years old right now, but I have friends who are, a lot older, and some who are younger, and that's normal. That's
Right.
what, socialization really is. And also I never felt like that forced association was socialization. A lot of kids fall in between the cracks. They're just not the athletic type, or the
Mhm.
type that finds it easy to make friends. And a lot of parents actually turn to homeschooling, and a majority of them do turn to it because of either bullying or just some sort of a
Right.
socialization issue in traditional schools. We didn't find that. My kids also did martial arts. My daughter does ballet. They've always done piano since they were very little. So piano less so, but the other things that they've done have always been social. So they have
Mhm.
their karate friends and their ballet friends,
Right.
etc., like most kids do.
Right.
And so that was never an issue for us. We were always on the go. And it also, when we would go to the stores or whatever we would do during the school day, they would have to interact with adults, and they interacted with adults a lot. And so they never really, went into their shell or felt uncomfortable around people. But I think it can happen. It's actually happening more now because they're not allowed to leave the house. And so that's another huge difference between homeschooling and distance learning. They are on FaceTime with their friends. They're doing a lot of Zoom classes and things, but it's not at all our experience with when we actually homeschooled.
Right. Yeah. That's a very good point. And now that I think about it, when you said, like, a lot of socialization happens in the extracurricular activities
Right.
class, and that's right. You know,
Right.
how many school friends are really, friends and things like that. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. So talk to me a little about the challenges that you faced. I'm sure there were many, right? Can you say what maybe your top 2 challenges?
So top 2, let me think. I think one is just wearing all the hats.
Yeah.
When you have kids, they can talk to you a certain way that they would never talk to a teacher. They would never snap at a teacher.
Right.
They would never. And my kids are pretty easygoing, but it got challenging when it's, and I'm like, I know I've seen you in workshops. I've seen you, in our teacher meetings. And I know that this is not how you would have talked to a teacher. So that's challenging, but that's just, that's part of it. That's just part of it. Every homeschool parent I know kind of struggles with that, wearing 2 hats. But it's also something that we overcome by, discipline and just kind of going, okay, I get it, you're frustrated, but let's walk this back and figure out, why are you so frustrated? You don't want to do it now. Okay, when do you want to do it? Because this has got to get done. So my kids have always had that, this is how much work we'd like to see get done this week or this month. And or usually maybe 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks we would have a goal. Like, let's get through this chapter.
Okay.
And it would be kind of up to them to get through that. So that's one challenge. And I guess, I don't know if you're going to, this is a challenge, I think, for everybody. And especially right now, people are probably finding it if they're working from home, homeschooling, and running a household. So that's the other probably biggest challenge when they're very young, is to also run a household and make all the meals and plan and shop and all those things. But that's, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's more when you're homeschooling, and it's also easier because you're not, you have more time and flexibility in some ways.
Right.
But that's a challenge, I think, for all moms, all dads,
Sure.
out there. It's really, it's not easy. And people are definitely feeling that pinch right now when you can't just go through the drive-through or pick up takeout.
Right. Absolutely.
So, yeah. So that's probably maybe two of our biggest challenges.
Okay. So since you talked about, I always wondered, like, how do you balance when, especially you're homeschooling, right? How do you balance your homeschool part and the household activities part, right? Where do you draw the line and say, okay, I'm done homeschooling for the day, and then let's do the other things? How do you do that? How did you do that?
That's a challenge too, and I think people who are working from home always find that, like, when do I just shut it off? Like, it can go on and on and on, right? And I think we would sometimes not do anything all morning. And then I would have to pay for it later in the afternoon, or we'd be doing math at 5 p.m., which nobody wants to do. So for us, it was more like, okay, we don't want to get stuck in a situation where we're all really tired and grumpy and done, and then trying to get, math of all things done. So, yeah, it is just a challenge. You just don't know when to turn it off. I think my kids will tell you that there was a lot of teachable moments that they could have done without, like when we're doing an activity that has nothing to do with school, and I try to, interject a little lesson or say, hey, remember when we were doing this in science? And they're over it by then. So you just feel it out. You feel it out and you go, okay, I'm sick of me and they're sick of me. So let's give it a rest. And so, and my kids were always really well equipped to go find something to do, because if they didn't, I would give them something to do. And so they are not like, I'm bored, I have nothing to, they will always run away and go do something if left alone. So we just had to turn it off at a certain point, and we just did.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really great to know. And, and especially with everything going on right now, and, you probably, as you said, they're using right now the lessons that, they have done, or any kind of experiences that they have acquired in the whole process, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. So tell me a little about how did the transition to school system, right? When both of them are in public school, right?
They are both in public school now. So they went back about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So they missed, I think, we were still homeschooling our little one in a few months into 6th grade. Okay. And my older one was in it's sort of like a homeschool transitional school, where he went to school 2 days a week, and he did, homeschooling 3 days a week. Okay. And so we sort of decided at that point, because my son was in 8th grade, we thought, okay, the easier thing may be to put him in public school now. So high school, he can hopefully go in with a group of friends or people he knows at least, and it's not such a shock to the system to go to school 5 days a week, etc. On top of being in high school for the first time. So we thought, okay, this is maybe a good time to transition my son into 8th grade. And then my daughter said, oh, I want to do that too. I would like to try public school. So she tried it. He actually took a little bit longer to make friends and to kind of find his place. But my daughter, was a very seamless transition, which was odd because she had never gone to public school. He went when he was very little, and she never went. And so we thought, okay, it's going to just be grueling, this whole different lifestyle. Right. But luckily she made some good friends pretty early on. And then she's been doing ballet for many years. So she had some of her ballet friends in school with her, which made the transition easier. And she's also grade accelerated. So she's about 1 year younger than all the other kids. So we thought that might be an issue, and that hasn't been an issue either. No. Okay. So the transition actually was not too bad. And I think the transition into high school was a little tougher just in general. I think most kids find that to be a weird time to be. So, and especially this year has been very, very strange.
Yeah, with everything going on. Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's a very important, take from this conversation that the viewers can take and utilize that, right? In case people are thinking about any kind of homeschooling and how, because they always think about, okay, what if, after a certain point, we can't do it as a parent, right?
Right.
They have to go back to school. And that's what you said. You described how your experience was, which is awesome in terms of transition, right? It was normal. And high school is high school, really. Like anybody who is going into high school would face challenges. So, yeah,
Right.
it doesn't matter whether you're homeschooling
And
or
most
not.
kids do transition back into public school at some point.
Right.
And if you're going to do this just as a transitional, like, okay, we're only going to be living here for 1 year, but so we don't like the school system around us, something like that, then I would mirror the district as closely as possible. So try to do what they're doing. That way, when your kid goes back, they're not completely lost, or they haven't moved so far ahead that they're repeating a year.
Right.
But if you're in it for the long, so initially when we started our first trimester, our first year, we tried to mirror the district. And then our second year, we really got in our groove and we didn't do anything that district was doing. So we did a lot of story of the world. That's a program with 4 books and workbooks for social studies. We went completely away from district. But if this is just a transitional year for you, or you don't anticipate doing it for very long, then mirror the district. It'll be an easier transition, maybe, for your kid.
Yeah, that's a very good advice. So tell me one thing you wish you knew before starting homeschooling. Is there anything like that? Or you are pretty prepared?
Yeah, no, I think it was just such an incredible, special time in our lives. We were able to travel a lot as a family. We did Italy for a few weeks in the beginning of May, which in traditional school would be impossible to just get away in the beginning of May with finals, etc.
Right.
We did India in January, and so we were able to travel whenever my husband's work schedule allowed, and I think that it was just such a really, really special time, and I think I enjoyed it. I think I really valued it, and it was actually not my idea to put my daughter into public school, but she wanted to. And I don't believe you should homeschool somebody against their will. Like, they need to be in it. Otherwise, it's just it doesn't make for a good relationship. Right. But I think, I don't know what I would tell myself. I think I would tell myself, enjoy it. It's really, really precious. It's really special. My kids I've been a stay-at-home mom for almost 15 years, and it feels like it just went by in a blink. So,
right, because you were doing so many stuffs and everything, really. Like, you were actually doing a job, right? Two jobs, really.
I firmly believe it was a job. It was,
absolutely.
Homeschooling does not pay very well, but it's
a full-time commitment. So, yeah, absolutely. I would say that. Yeah.
Right.
So what is one?
Just say enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is one thing you would, one advice you would give to parents who are considering homeschooling as an option?
If you're considering it, you have to get past I can see how other people do it, but I can't do that. I'm not that person. Because I said the same thing. Like, I love the idea. I think, but if you're considering it seriously, then you have what it takes. That's just the fact that you think that you'd like to try this means that you can do it. You don't have to know everything. Your kid doesn't have to know everything. When you look back on your own education, there are so many gaps. Absolutely. You don't know history from start to finish. Nobody does. Yeah. So I wouldn't worry so much about, is my kid's going to adjust socially? Are they going to be as academically strong? They're going to be. They're going to be fine. And you also don't have to be the expert in everything. There's so many resources. There's homeschool classes that you can take. I know there's a homeschool supply store not too far from me. And so they also run classes. So my kids did science classes, etc. I didn't want them to dissect frogs at home, so they did that there. So there's just if you have it in your heart and you have a heart for homeschooling, you absolutely 100% can do it. And it just takes a little work and effort, but yeah, if you're even considering it, then that means you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Sandhya. I really, really enjoyed talking to all, listening to your experience and talking with you. I hope the viewers can take away very important inputs from this discussion. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
हेलो, मैं हूँ सैंडी बैनर्जी और हमें उम्मीद है कि आपको हमारा शो जरूर पसंद आया होगा. For latest content, please keep watching My Dream TV USA and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching My Dream TV USA.